So you just got a new camera and you're probably really excited to go out and shoot with it. But hold on, before you go out and shoot photos with your brand new camera, here are 6 settings that you should change to not only make life easier for yourself when you're using your camera, but to make sure that you get the best results possible out of your new gear. The first thing that we're gonna do with a brand new camera is set up our back button focusing. Most digital cameras by default will trigger the autofocus when you do a half press of your shutter. And when you do a full press of the shutter, it will actually take the photo. Now, this presents us with a bit of a disadvantage. It means that every single time we release the shutter to take a new photo, our camera is going to redo the focus. It is entirely possible that it will miss the focus because it's recalculating every single time you take a photo. It introduces more of a chance for your autofocus to make an error. Back button focusing simply changes the autofocus triggering button from a half shutter press to a button that is on the back of your camera, one that is easily accessible with your thumb. Most modern cameras have the ability to map a back button focus. You may have to search for a specific tutorial to your specific camera though. When selecting a button for your back button focus, most people will select the AF on button. However, you can certainly select other buttons, maybe a custom button on your camera depending on what options it gives you. But make sure the button that you select to use as your back button focus is not one that you will have to use often. Setting a back button focus offers a couple of pretty distinct advantages. The biggest one is it effectively allows you to lock in where your camera is focused and take multiple photos without having to readjust your focus. Another advantage is that depending on your camera, it can be quite a bit more ergonomic to use a back button focus instead of your half press shutter. Now, the next setting that we're gonna change is our image quality. Now, I'm gonna focus on still image quality here, but if your camera is capable of shooting video, I would highly recommend looking up what the best settings are for your specific camera. When it comes to still images, most cameras will offer you 3 different choices: RAW, JPEG, or a combination of RAW and JPEG at the same time. Now, we're gonna talk very high level about what the differences are between those formats, but if you want a bit more of a detailed dive, I'll link to a few helpful videos down below. Generally speaking, RAW files give you a lot more control and versatility when it comes to photo editing. However, RAW files record a lot of information and therefore are much larger in size than JPEGs. Depending on your camera's capabilities, shooting in RAW may slow down how quickly you can shoot or how many photos you can shoot in succession without your camera having to catch up to write those files. RAW files are also not ready to be delivered. They must be edited and exported into either PNG or JPEG format before they can be viewed online or printed. Now, shooting in JPEG is gonna save you a lot on storage space, and it's going to generally allow your camera to shoot faster than when shooting in RAW files, but it doesn't offer the same amount of versatility. It does have the benefit of allowing you to effectively upload that photo anywhere you need to without having to edit it first. If you are going to be shooting in RAW format, I would highly recommend selecting lossless compressed RAW files. In my experience, using lossless compression on your RAW files does not sacrifice much in terms of detail and versatility in editing, but it also finds a nice balance between that detail and storage space. For all of those JPEG shooters out there, I would recommend you select the fine or extra fine JPEG format. Because JPEG files are not very large to begin with, there's no real reason to shoot in any of the lower sizes. The next setting that we're gonna make sure to change is our focusing settings. Now, within focus, there are a few different settings that you need to be aware of and be able to change to match your needs on your camera. The specifics for each camera will obviously be slightly different. Now, all of these settings are gonna affect those of you that are using autofocus. So if you are using manual focus, none of this is going to apply. Most cameras will allow you to choose between either more or less autofocus points. Generally speaking, I would recommend recommend using more autofocus points for most cameras. Now, depending on your specific camera, you'll have a few options here, but the most common ones you'll see across all cameras are spot focus, center weighted focus, or maybe specific area weighted focus, like across the middle of the frame. Specific cameras may have more options as far as your focus area, so look up what is the best options for your specific camera. Depending on what you are going to be shooting, where you need your camera to focus may change. If you are someone that is shooting human subjects, or you are changing from horizontal to vertical orientation a lot, you may benefit more from being able to select a specific area of the frame for your camera to focus on. Now, if you're shooting landscapes or real estate or non-moving objects, chances are you're not going to need to change where your camera focuses very often. So you can benefit from the ease of use of a center weighted autofocus or just a blanket entire frame autofocus area. But do consider your specific needs and look up the specifics of what you need to change on your camera. If your camera is capable of subject detection or tracking autofocus, such as eye autofocus, for example, this is a good time to make sure that is turned on as well. The next setting that we're going to change is redundant recording. This is only going to apply if your camera has two separate SD card slots. It means that it is capable of shooting the same photo or video to both SD cards at once, creating a backup or a duplicate of every single image that you take. This is especially important for those of you that expect to be shooting things like portraits, weddings, engagements, events, effectively anything that is very difficult to recreate. The next thing that we're going to change and set up on our camera is our custom buttons. Most cameras have at least one or two custom buttons that are dedicated to quickly accessing specific settings or adjustments that can be changed and customized. Some cameras may offer more than just one or two custom buttons. If your camera has custom buttons, those custom buttons will by default be mapped to certain specific settings that the manufacturer thinks you need to be able to quickly access. While those default custom settings and quick access buttons may be perfectly fine for your use case, it's certainly something you can take a look at to see if maybe there's a setting that makes more sense for your use case to be able to quickly access. Here are a few common examples of ways that photographers will use the custom buttons on their camera. You can do things like changing between focus modes such as autofocus and manual focus. You can use it to pull up your focus area option and quickly change between different focus areas. If you have a mirrorless camera, you may be able to use it to toggle between your electronic viewfinder and your LCD screen. You can use it to bring up the color profiles menu and quickly switch between different color profiles. The next setting that we're going to change on our new camera is the copyright info and date and time. Every camera will have a date and time setting, and most cameras will have the option to set your copyright info as well. Having your date and time set correctly is going to be a big advantage when it comes to organizing and storing your photos later on. And setting your copyright information in your camera itself is going to record that information on every single photo you take in the EXIF data or the metadata. And it offers you a bit more protection against getting your photos stolen or used without your permission. And that's pretty much it. Those are the 6 settings that I would recommend you change and make sure you understand on your brand new camera before you go out and shoot. If you're a new photographer, I hope you found this video helpful. If you're an experienced photographer, I'd love to know in the comments down below, what are some of the settings that you always change on your brand new cameras? If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. If you want to see more photography related content like this, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.